Ethan Miller had always been the golden goose of the Miller family. From a young age, growing up in the quiet, tree-lined suburbs of Portland, Oregon, he possessed an innate drive, a sharp intellect, and a work ethic that bordered on relentless. While his older sister, Chloe, pursued a more bohemian lifestyle, and his younger brother, Liam, struggled with academic and professional consistency, Ethan excelled. He graduated top of his class from the University of Washington, landed a coveted position at a burgeoning tech startup in Seattle, and quickly climbed the corporate ladder, his salary growing exponentially with each passing year. His parents, David and Susan Miller, initially expressed pride, but their praise soon morphed into something more insidious: expectation. Ethan's success wasn't just his own. It became the family's collective asset. His annual bonuses were discussed at Thanksgiving dinner, his promotions celebrated with thinly veiled suggestions for how his newfound wealth could benefit everyone else. "You're doing so well, Ethan," his mother would coo, her hand gently squeezing his arm. "And it's such a comfort to know you're there for us." His father would nod sagely, adding, "A son's duty, after all. Family first." This unspoken contract solidified over the years. When Chloe needed a down payment for her art studio in San Francisco, Ethan provided it. When Liam racked up significant credit card debt from failed business ventures, Ethan quietly paid it off. His parents, who had always lived comfortably but never extravagantly, began to see Ethan as their de facto retirement fund. Their house in Portland needed a new roof? Ethan paid. Their annual cruises to the Caribbean? Ethan covered the cost. Even their medical bills, increasingly frequent as they aged, found their way to Ethan's meticulously managed bank account. Ethan, caught in the web of familial obligation and a deep-seated desire for approval, rarely questioned it. He loved his family, and he genuinely wanted them to be happy and secure. He worked harder, saved more, and denied himself many luxuries, all to ensure his family's comfort. He told himself it was temporary, that eventually, Chloe would find her footing, Liam would become responsible, and his parents would be financially stable enough to manage on their own. But eventually never came. The demands only grew, becoming more frequent, more entitled, and less apologetic. His own life, meanwhile, felt increasingly hollow. His demanding job left him little time for personal relationships, and the few he attempted withered under the constant pressure of his family's needs. Dates would often end abruptly when he had to take a call about a sudden family emergency, usually a financial one. He lived in a modest apartment, drove an older car, and rarely took vacations, all while funding a lifestyle for his family that far exceeded his own. He was a highly paid executive, yet he felt like a servant, his identity reduced to a walking ATM. The breaking point arrived subtly, not with a bang, but with a slow, agonizing drip. It was a Tuesday evening, after a particularly grueling day at work. Ethan was preparing a simple dinner when his phone buzzed. It was Chloe. "Ethan, darling," she chirped, her voice overly sweet. "Guess what? I found the most amazing gallery space in Sausalito. It's perfect for my new collection. Just a small loan, for the first 6 months' rent. Only about $15,000. You're the best." Before Ethan could even respond, another text came through from Liam. "Hey bro, need a quick 2,500. Car trouble. Urgent." And then, an email from his mother, forwarded from his father. "Ethan, your father's golf club membership is due. It's a bit steep this year, almost 5,000. We know you wouldn't want him to miss out on his only hobby. Love, Mom and Dad." Ethan stared at his phone, the screen glowing with the relentless demands. 15,000, plus 2,500, plus 5,000. In one evening, nearly $23,000. For a gallery space, car trouble, and a golf membership. He felt a cold, hard knot form in his stomach. He was 35 years old, successful by any objective measure, yet he was utterly trapped. He was their retirement plan, their emergency fund, their luxury budget, and their emotional crutch all rolled into one. He was disappearing, piece by piece, into their needs, leaving nothing left for himself. That night, Ethan didn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the faces of his family flashing before his eyes. He saw Chloe's expectant smile, Liam's perpetually hopeful gaze, his parents' knowing nods. He saw himself, a ghost in his own life, defined solely by what he could provide. The thought, stark and terrifying, echoed in his mind. I need to disappear. Not literally, of course, but from this role, this suffocating expectation. He needed to reclaim himself, to find the Ethan who existed beyond the financial ledger of the Miller family. The next morning, Ethan called his HR department. He requested a 6-month sabbatical, citing burnout and a need for personal reflection. His boss, recognizing Ethan's invaluable contributions, readily agreed. He then began the arduous task of disentangling himself. He changed his phone number, set up a new, private email address, and informed his bank to flag any attempts by his family to access his accounts. He drafted a single, carefully worded email to his parents, Chloe and Liam. It was brief, devoid of emotion, and to the point. To my family, it read, I am taking an extended leave of absence. During this time, I will be unreachable. I will not be providing any further financial assistance. I encourage you all to find independent solutions for your financial needs. I wish you well, Ethan. He hit send, his finger trembling, and then he deleted his old email account. He packed a single suitcase, sold his modest apartment, and bought a one-way ticket to a small, remote town in Montana he had once visited on a solo hiking trip, Willow Creek. He was going to disappear. He was going to find himself. He was going to become the ghost of Willow Creek, at least to the Millers. Willow Creek was everything Seattle wasn't. Quiet, unpretentious, and surrounded by the raw, untamed beauty of the Rocky Mountains. Ethan rented a small cabin on the outskirts of town, with a porch that overlooked a winding river. For the first few weeks, he did nothing but hike, read, and sleep. He disconnected from the internet, his phone remained off, and he allowed the silence to wash over him, slowly healing the deep-seated exhaustion that had become his constant companion. He felt the tension in his shoulders ease, the knot in his stomach unravel. He was finally breathing. He knew his family would be in an uproar. He imagined the frantic phone calls, the angry voicemails, the bewildered texts. He pictured his mother's tears, his father's indignation, Chloe's accusations of abandonment, and Liam's desperate pleas. He felt a pang of guilt, a familiar ache, but he pushed it down. This wasn't about hurting them. It was about saving himself. He had given them everything, and in return they had taken his identity. It was time to reclaim it. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan began to shed the skin of the golden goose. He started volunteering at the local animal shelter, finding immense joy in the simple act of caring for abandoned creatures. He took up woodworking, his hands, once accustomed to keyboards, now shaping raw timber into beautiful, functional pieces. He learned to fish, to identify constellations, and to appreciate the rhythm of a life unburdened by external expectations. He made new friends, people who knew nothing of his past, who valued him for his quiet kindness, his dry wit, and his genuine interest in their lives, not for his bank balance. One evening, while sharing a beer with a new friend, a grizzled old logger named Jed, Ethan recounted a sanitized version of his past, omitting the financial details but conveying the emotional toll of his family's demands. Jed listened patiently, then simply said, "Son, sometimes the kindest thing you can do for folks is let them stand on their own 2 feet. You can't carry their burdens forever. It'll break you." Jed's words resonated deeply, confirming Ethan's decision. He wasn't abandoning his family. He was allowing them the dignity of their own struggles, the opportunity to grow. Back in Portland, the Miller family was in chaos. Ethan's sudden disappearance had sent shockwaves through their carefully constructed world. David and Susan were bewildered, then angry. "How could he do this to us?" Susan wailed, clutching her pearls. "After everything we've done for him," Richard fumed. "He's always been so responsible. This is completely out of character. He must be having some kind of breakdown." Chloe, suddenly without her gallery rent, was furious. "He's selfish. He only cares about himself." Liam, facing mounting debts, was desperate. "He can't just disappear. We need him." Their initial attempts to contact Ethan were met with silence. His old phone number was disconnected. His email bounced back. They tried his workplace, only to be informed he was on an extended sabbatical and his whereabouts were unknown. Panic began to set in. Their carefully planned retirement, their comfortable lifestyle, their very sense of security, was built on Ethan's continued financial support. Without him, their house of cards began to wobble precariously. Chloe's gallery space was repossessed. Liam's car was impounded. David and Susan were forced to cancel their cruise and began to cut back on their expenses, a concept entirely foreign to them. The golf club membership was forfeited. The reality of their situation, stark and unforgiving, began to sink in. They were not just inconvenienced. They were facing genuine financial hardship, a consequence of their own choices and their reliance on Ethan. Months turned into a year. Ethan, now tanned and lean, with a newfound peace in his eyes, was unrecognizable from the stressed-out executive who had arrived in Willow Creek. He had opened a small woodworking shop, crafting custom furniture and selling it to the local community. He had even started dating Sarah, a kind and independent woman who ran the local bookstore. He was happy, truly happy, for the first time in his adult life. He had found his own purpose, his own identity, far removed from the Miller family's expectations. One day, while browsing through an old newspaper at the local diner, Ethan saw a small article about a tech company in Seattle. His old company. He felt a flicker of curiosity, a ghost of his past. He decided, cautiously, to check his new private email. There, amongst a few newsletters, was an email from Vivian Shaw, a lawyer he vaguely remembered his parents mentioning. The subject line read, "Regarding the Miller family estate." Ethan's heart pounded. He opened the email. It was a formal notification. His parents, David and Susan Miller, had filed for bankruptcy. Their house in Portland was being foreclosed upon. Chloe was facing legal action for unpaid debts related to her failed gallery. Liam was working 2 minimum wage jobs, struggling to make ends meet. The email also mentioned a small inheritance from a distant relative, a great-aunt Ethan barely remembered, that was now being contested by his parents, who claimed Ethan had abandoned his claim by disappearing. The news hit Ethan with a complex mix of emotions. There was a pang of sadness for their predicament, a flicker of the old guilt, but beneath it, a stronger feeling, vindication. They had made their bed, and now they had to lie in it. He had warned them implicitly and explicitly, for years. He had given them countless opportunities to become self-sufficient. They had chosen to ignore him, to exploit him, to treat him as their personal ATM. And now, the consequences were their own. He replied to Vivian Shaw, requesting more information. He learned that his parents were attempting to use the distant relative's small inheritance, which was rightfully Ethan's, to stave off their bankruptcy. They were still trying to use him even in his absence. This solidified his resolve. He would not allow it. He instructed Vivian to proceed with his claim to the inheritance, not out of greed, but out of principle. He would not be their golden goose, not anymore. Vivian Shaw, a sharp and efficient lawyer, quickly secured Ethan's rightful inheritance. It wasn't a large sum, but it was enough to make a difference, enough to fund his woodworking shop, enough to secure his future. He used a portion of it to establish a small, anonymous scholarship fund for local students in Willow Creek, a quiet act of generosity that brought him more joy than any of his previous financial contributions to his family ever had. One day, Ethan received a letter. It was from Chloe. The handwriting was shaky, the tone subdued. She wrote of her struggles, her regret, her realization that she had taken him for granted. She didn't ask for money, only for a chance to talk, to apologize, to understand. A similar letter arrived from Liam, filled with remorse and a genuine desire to change. And then, a joint letter from his parents, devoid of their usual entitlement, filled with a raw, honest admission of their mistakes, their fear, and their desperate hope for reconciliation. Ethan read the letters, his heart a complex tapestry of emotions. He wasn't ready to forgive, not entirely. The wounds were still too deep, the betrayal too profound. But he was no longer angry. He felt a quiet sense of peace, a sense of closure. He had disappeared, and in his absence, his family had been forced to confront their own choices, their own responsibilities. They had been forced to grow, however painfully. He decided to reply, not with an immediate reunion, but with a cautious offer. He would meet them one by one in a neutral location with Vivian Shaw present. He would listen, but he would not forget. He would establish clear boundaries that would protect his newfound peace and his reclaimed identity. He was no longer the golden goose, no longer the retirement plan. He was Ethan Miller, a man who had disappeared to find himself, and in doing so had finally found his true home within himself. The first meeting was with Chloe, in a small, anonymous cafe in Salt Lake City. She looked tired, older, her bohemian spirit dimmed by the harsh realities of financial struggle. She cried. She apologized. She admitted her selfishness. Ethan listened, his heart aching, but his resolve unwavering. He told her he wasn't ready for a full reconciliation, but he was willing to consider a relationship built on mutual respect, not financial dependency. He offered her a chance to visit Willow Creek, not as a guest to be entertained, but as a friend, to see the life he had built. Liam's meeting was equally difficult. He had matured, his youthful recklessness replaced by a quiet humility. He spoke of his struggles, his newfound commitment to sobriety, and his determination to build a stable life. Ethan saw a flicker of the brother he had once admired, a glimpse of hope. He offered Liam a job at his woodworking shop, an opportunity to learn a trade, to build something with his own hands, to earn his own way. Liam, tears in his eyes, accepted. His parents' meeting was the hardest. They looked frail, their once impeccable appearance now showing the strain of their financial woes. They apologized profusely, their voices choked with regret. They admitted their mistakes, their entitlement, their blindness to his sacrifices. Ethan listened, his heart heavy. He saw the genuine remorse in their eyes, the fear of losing him completely. He told them he loved them, but he could not forget the past. He offered them a chance to rebuild their relationship, not as their financial provider, but as their son on his terms. He would visit them occasionally, but his life was in Willow Creek now. His home was in Willow Creek. Ethan returned to Willow Creek, his heart lighter, his spirit renewed. He had faced his past, confronted his family, and emerged stronger. He had not just disappeared. He had transformed. He was no longer the ghost of his own life, but a man fully present, fully alive. He had reclaimed his self-respect, his independence, and his identity. He had found his true home, not in the expectations of others, but within himself, in the quiet strength of Willow Creek. His story became a quiet legend in Willow Creek, a testament to the power of self-preservation and the courage to choose one's own path. He continued to build his woodworking business, his creations reflecting the peace and serenity he had found. He married Sarah, the kind bookstore owner, and together they built a life filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. He maintained cautious contact with his family, the relationships slowly mending, not to their former, toxic state, but to a new, healthier dynamic built on clear boundaries and earned trust. Chloe eventually found success with her art. Liam became a skilled woodworker, and his parents, though humbled, found a new appreciation for financial independence. Ethan, the golden goose who had flown the coop, had not just disappeared. He had soared, finding his own sky, his own freedom, and his own true north. His life was a testament to the fact that sometimes, to truly find yourself, you have to be brave enough to disappear from the expectations of others. Ethan's life in Willow Creek blossomed. The small woodworking shop he started, initially a hobby, grew into a thriving business. His custom-made furniture, crafted with meticulous attention to detail and a deep respect for the natural beauty of the wood, became highly sought after. He found immense satisfaction in working with his hands, transforming raw materials into functional art. This creative outlet, so different from the abstract world of tech, provided a grounding he hadn't realized he craved. He was no longer just an executive, he was a craftsman, an artist in his own right. His relationship with Sarah, the owner of the local bookstore, deepened into a profound partnership. Sarah, with her quiet wisdom and independent spirit, understood Ethan in a way no one else ever had. She saw beyond the successful tech executive, beyond the family burden, to the kind, thoughtful, and resilient man beneath. They shared a love for the outdoors, for books, and for the simple, honest life they were building together. Their evenings were filled with long conversations by the fireplace, hikes through the starlit mountains, and the quiet joy of shared dreams. Sarah became his anchor, his confidant, and his greatest supporter. She was the family he chose, a family built on mutual respect, understanding, and unconditional love. Ethan also became an integral part of the Willow Creek community. He coached the local youth baseball team, his patience and encouragement fostering a sense of teamwork and self-belief in the young players. He helped organize community events, his organizational skills, once honed in the corporate world, now serving a more meaningful purpose. He was no longer defined by his wealth or his family's demands. He was defined by his contributions, his character, and the genuine connections he forged. His past, however, was not entirely forgotten. The emails and letters from his family continued, though their tone had shifted dramatically. The initial anger and accusations had given way to pleas, then to genuine remorse. Chloe wrote of her struggles to make ends meet, her art now a solitary pursuit rather than a commercial venture. Liam, after losing his car and facing eviction, had finally hit rock bottom and sought help for his gambling addiction. His parents, facing foreclosure and the harsh realities of their financial mismanagement, expressed profound regret for their past actions, admitting their entitlement and their blindness to Ethan's sacrifices. They spoke of therapy, of self-reflection, and of a desperate desire to mend the broken bonds. Ethan read their words with a complex mix of emotions. The old wounds still throbbed, but the raw pain had dulled, replaced by a quiet understanding. He knew their struggles were real, and he felt a pang of empathy. But he also knew that he could not return to his old role. He had to protect the peace he had fought so hard to achieve. He discussed the situation with Sarah and Vivian Shaw, his lawyer, who had become a trusted friend. They advised caution, emphasizing the importance of maintaining his boundaries. After much deliberation, Ethan decided to respond. He wrote a carefully worded letter, not an email outlining his terms. He expressed his willingness to consider a cautious reconciliation, but made it clear that any future relationship would be built on new foundations: mutual respect, clear boundaries, and a complete cessation of financial demands. He offered to meet them one by one, in a neutral location with Vivian present. He would listen, but he would not forget. He would offer support, but not financial aid. He was no longer their retirement plan. He was their son, their brother, but on his terms. Chloe was the first to meet him, in a quiet cafe in Denver, Colorado. She looked thinner, her vibrant energy subdued. She spoke of her journey, her struggles with her art, and her realization that true creativity came from within, not from external funding. She apologized genuinely for her past selfishness and for taking him for granted. Ethan listened, his heart softening. He saw a glimmer of the sister he had once loved, the artist who had inspired him. He offered her a chance to visit Willow Creek, not as a guest seeking handouts, but as a fellow artist, to share her work and her journey. He even offered to help her set up a small online store for her art, teaching her the business skills she had always lacked. Liam's meeting took place in a small town in Idaho, near a rehabilitation center where he was receiving treatment for his addiction. He was sober, humble, and filled with a quiet determination to rebuild his life. He spoke of his shame, his regret, and his gratitude for Ethan's tough love, which had forced him to confront his demons. Ethan saw a man who was finally taking responsibility for his actions. He offered Liam a job at his woodworking shop, an apprenticeship where he could learn a valuable trade, work with his hands, and build a new future. Liam, tears in his eyes, accepted, his voice thick with gratitude. His parents' meeting was the most challenging. It took place in a small conference room in Salt Lake City, with Vivian Shaw present. David and Susan looked older, their once impeccable appearance now showing the strain of their financial woes and the emotional toll of their actions. They apologized profusely, their voices choked with regret, their eyes filled with tears. They admitted their mistakes, their entitlement, their blindness to his sacrifices. They spoke of their fear of losing him completely, of the emptiness they had felt in his absence. Ethan listened, his heart heavy, but his resolve unwavering. He saw their genuine remorse, but he also remembered the years of exploitation, the emotional manipulation, the constant demands. He told them he loved them, but he could not forget the past. He explained that their relationship would have to be different, built on respect and clear boundaries. He offered to visit them occasionally to maintain a connection, but his life, his home, was now in Willow Creek. He was no longer their financial safety net, their retirement plan. He was their son, but he was also his own man, with his own life, his own family, and his own peace. They accepted his terms, humbled and chastened, understanding that this was the only way to salvage any semblance of a relationship. Ethan returned to Willow Creek, his heart lighter, his spirit renewed. He had faced his past, confronted his family, and emerged stronger. He had not just disappeared. He had transformed. He was no longer the ghost of his own life, but a man fully present, fully alive. He had reclaimed his self-respect, his independence, and his identity. He had found his true home, not in the expectations of others, but within himself, in the quiet strength of Willow Creek. His story became a quiet legend in Willow Creek, a testament to the power of self-preservation and the courage to choose one's own path. He continued to build his woodworking business, his creations reflecting the peace and serenity he had found. He married Sarah, the kind bookstore owner, and together they built a life filled with love, laughter, and mutual respect. He maintained cautious contact with his family, the relationships slowly mending, not to their former, toxic state, but to a new, healthier dynamic built on clear boundaries and earned trust. Chloe eventually found success with her art. Liam became a skilled woodworker, and his parents, though humbled, found a new appreciation for financial independence. Ethan, the golden goose who had flown the coop, had not just disappeared. He had soared, finding his own sky, his own freedom, and his own true north. His life was a testament to the fact that sometimes, to truly find yourself, you have to be brave enough to disappear from the expectations of others. He learned that true love wasn't about endless giving, but about fostering growth, even if that growth meant a temporary, painful separation. And in that understanding, he found his ultimate freedom.